The survey ship drifted through the outer reaches of the galaxy where stars grew thin, and darkness stretched between them like an endless ocean. Admiral Corvas stood on the bridge, his 4 eyes scanning the displays with practiced boredom. The Vexhari Empire had mapped every corner of the galaxy worth mapping. This region was not worth mapping. "Admiral, we're detecting something unusual," his sensor officer reported. The young officer's scales rippled with uncertainty. Corvas moved to the station. On the screen, energy readings pulsed in patterns that made no sense. No star burned here. No nebula clouded this space. Yet something was generating power. Massive amounts of it. "Take us closer," he ordered. As they approached, the structure emerged from the darkness. It was enormous, larger than any space station the Council had ever built. Metallic surfaces caught the distant starlight, and arrays of equipment pointed in all directions like the branches of some mechanical tree. The design was foreign, unlike anything in the galactic database. "Run a comparison check," Corvast said. "What civilization built this?" The computer worked for several minutes. Then it displayed a single word: unknown. Corvast felt something he rarely experienced: surprise. The Vexhari had been spacefaring for 30,000 years. They knew every species, every design philosophy, every architectural style in the galaxy. This matched nothing. "It's broadcasting," the communications officer announced. "Multiple signals on different frequencies. Hundreds of different languages. Can you translate any of them?" "No, sir. None match our database. But the mathematical patterns suggest they're meant to be understood, like a universal greeting." Corvast considered ordering a retreat. First contact protocols required careful preparation, but curiosity won over caution. "Send a standard greeting pulse. Let's see what responds." The communications officer transmitted the signal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every screen on the bridge flashed with incoming data. The structure had responded instantly, flooding their systems with information. "It's uploading to our computer," the officer said, alarm in his voice. "Cut the connection," Corvast ordered. "I can't, sir. It's not forcing its way in. Our system is accepting it willingly, like it recognizes the protocol." That should have been impossible. Vexhari security systems were the best in the galaxy. Yet this unknown structure had bypassed everything as if the protections didn't exist. The data upload completed. The ship's computer began processing, organizing, translating. On the main screen, a map appeared. It showed the entire outer rim of the galaxy. Thousands of light years of space the Council considered empty wasteland. Dotted along that vast frontier were thousands of markers, each representing a structure like the one they'd found. "By the ancient void," someone whispered. Corvast stared at the map. This wasn't a single station. This was a network that encircled the entire galaxy. The resources required to build such a thing would bankrupt 100 empires. The time needed would span millennia. What civilization could accomplish this? "Admiral," the communications officer said quietly, "there's a message. It's in our language now." "Perfect, Vexhari. Play it." A calm voice filled the bridge. The accent was strange, the pronunciation slightly off but understandable. "Thank you for your inquiry. Your approach has been noted and welcomed. We apologize for the automated nature of this response. A human representative will contact you shortly. Please stand by." "Human?" Corvast repeated. The word meant nothing to him. Before anyone could respond, every communication system on the ship activated simultaneously. Not just on the ship, reports flooded in from across the network. Every Council world, every station, every vessel in explored space was receiving the same transmission. The bridge screen switched to display a chamber somewhere unknown. A figure sat in a chair, bipedal, with only 2 eyes and strange, smooth skin. It wore a simple uniform marked with symbols Corvas didn't recognize. Behind it, through a window, stars drifted past, but they were the wrong stars, moving in ways that suggested impossible speeds. "Greetings," the figure said. It smiled, showing flat teeth. "My name is Ambassador Chen Wei of the Terran Fringe Territories. We've received your survey ship's contact request with great interest. We apologize for our long silence. We didn't realize anyone else was out here." Corvast found his voice. "Who are you? What is the Terran Fringe Territories?" The human's smile widened. "I suppose we have much to discuss. The short answer is that we're your neighbors. We've lived on the galactic edge for 2,000 years. We built our homes in the places you never looked. around dying stars near black holes in regions you marked as too dangerous or too poor in resources. We thought we were alone. Impossible, Corvus said. We've surveyed the galaxy. There's nothing on the outer rim. You surveyed for what you considered valuable. Chen Wei replied gently. Habitable worlds, stable stars, calm space. You missed us because we don't live in those places. We couldn't. We had no choice but to adapt to the edge. The transmission continued, but Corvus barely heard it. His mind was reeling. An entire civilization had existed beyond the boundaries of known space, and the Council had never known. The Vexhari Empire, masters of the galaxy, had missed something this enormous. Worse, the casual way this human spoke suggested they weren't primitive survivors clinging to existence. They were confident, organized, and their technology had casually bypassed every Council security system without apparent effort. Corvus looked at the map still displayed on his screen. Thousands of installations forming a chain around the galaxy. Not scattered randomly, he realized now. Positioned strategically like fortifications, like a wall. What were they keeping out? Or what were they keeping in? He had a feeling the galaxy was about to change forever. The Council delegation arrived at the coordinates 3 weeks later. Corvus commanded a fleet of 20 vessels, representatives from a dozen species aboard. They expected ruins, perhaps a struggling colony. They found a city that hung in space where no city should exist. The habitat orbited a neutron star, spinning so fast it appeared as a blur of light. Radiation levels were lethal. Gravitational forces should have torn any structure apart. Yet the city floated there peacefully, a ring of metal and light that rotated in perfect synchronization with the deadly star below. How is this possible? Asked Council member Thera, a scholar from the Peaceful Million Collective. Her tentacles trembled as she studied the readings. The habitat uses the neutron star's rotation for power, a human technician explained over the communication channel. His name was Rodriguez, and he spoke with the ease of someone explaining something obvious. The magnetic field is incredibly strong. We tap into it using superconducting collectors. Gives us more energy than 100 fusion reactors. But the radiation, Thera began. Shielded, Rodriguez said. Layered magnetic bottles, gravitic deflectors, and about 50 meters of water ice on the outer hull. It's perfectly safe. Well, mostly safe. We only evacuate during solar storms. The delegation transferred to a human shuttle for the final approach. As they drew closer, Corvus could see the city in detail. It wasn't just functional, it was beautiful. Gardens visible through transparent sections. Waterways that somehow flowed in zero gravity. Buildings that curved and twisted in ways that made his eyes hurt, but seemed perfectly natural here. They docked at a port that looked like it could service 1,000 ships. Only it was half full, and many of the ships Corvus saw were clearly designed for purposes he couldn't identify. Strange shapes, unusual configurations, weapons that didn't match any known classification. Ambassador Chen Wei met them in person. She looked younger than she had on the transmission, with dark hair and eyes that held a depth of experience. She wore the same simple uniform, but Corvus noticed it was reinforced in ways that suggested it was also armor. Welcome to Forge Station, she said, gesturing at the city around them. We built it 800 years ago as a mining and manufacturing hub. Now it's home to 12 million people. 12 million, Thera whispered, living next to a neutron star. We have 342 habitats like this one, Chen Wei said as she led them through corridors bustling with humans. Each built around stellar phenomena you'd consider too dangerous. Neutron stars, black holes, dying giants, nebula clusters with intense radiation. We've learned to live where others can't. They passed through a park where real trees grew under artificial sunlight. Children played on grass that shouldn't exist in space. Corvus saw humans of all ages, all types, all seemingly comfortable in this impossible place. Your technology is more advanced than ours, he said quietly. Chen Wei glanced at him. In some ways, yes. In others, probably not. We developed what we needed to survive. You developed what made sense for stable systems. Different problems create different solutions. She led them to an observation deck. The view took Corvus' breath away. Beyond the city, space was alive with activity. Mining vessels approached dying stars, extracting materials from their outer layers. Construction ships built new sections of the habitat. In the distance, he saw what looked like military vessels running exercises. but their movements were unlike anything he'd seen, utilizing the gravitational chaos in ways that should have destroyed them. "Why did you come here?" Councilmember Thera asked. "Why live in such harsh conditions?" Chen Wei's expression grew somber. "We didn't have a choice. 2,000 years ago, our home system was destroyed. A stellar collision, unpredictable and catastrophic. Billions died. The survivors fled in whatever ships we could build. We ran as far as we could to the edge of the galaxy where we thought we'd be safe from cosmic disasters. And you found this," Korvast said. "We found opportunity. The edge is rich in resources if you know how to access them. Dying stars produce heavy elements in their final years. Black holes let you manipulate space-time if you're clever. Radiation-rich nebulas allow for exotic particle harvesting. What looks like wasteland to you is a treasure trove to us." She pulled up a holographic display showing the human territories. Thousands of systems, all in regions the Council had marked as worthless or dangerous. "We rebuilt our civilization here. We adapted, evolved, thrived. We thought we were alone because we never detected signals from the galactic core. Space is big. Radiation at the edge interferes with long-range communications, and frankly, we were too busy surviving to look." Thera moved closer to the display. "But you built defenses. These installations aren't just habitats. They're fortifications." Chen Wei met her gaze steadily. "Yes, defending against what?" The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the station continued its rotation, the neutron star spinning below like a jewel of impossible light. Finally, she spoke. "We weren't entirely alone out here," she said softly. "There were other things at the edge. Things that made us realize why this region was empty, why no civilization had settled here before us." Korvast felt a chill run through his body. "What things?" Chen Wei turned to face them fully. Her expression was serious, and for the first time, Korvast saw something in her eyes that he recognized from his own military career. The look of someone who had seen combat. "Real combat. That's a longer conversation," she said, "and one that requires clearance from my superiors. But since you've come this far, since you've reached out to us, I think it's time you knew the truth about what exists beyond the edge of the galaxy. The real reason we built this network. The reason we've stayed vigilant for 2,000 years. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that silenced the entire delegation. "You thought the edge was empty. You were wrong, and we've been protecting you from learning exactly how wrong you were." General Marcus Stone looked like he'd been carved from the same metal as the warships he commanded. His hair was gray, his face lined with scars, and his eyes held the kind of exhaustion that came from decades of war. He stood before the council delegation in a briefing room, deep within a military installation that orbited nothing. It simply hung in the void between star clusters, cloaked and hidden. "What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest level," he said. "Most humans don't know the full truth. We tell them stories, partial truths, enough to keep them vigilant but not enough to cause panic. Now you'll understand why." He activated a holographic display. The galaxy appeared, spinning slowly. Then he zoomed out, pulling back until the galaxy was just one spiral among countless others, separated by vast gulfs of dark space. "Between galaxies, there's void," Stone said. "Empty space, or so most species assume. Dark matter, dark energy. The cosmic web connecting galactic clusters. That's what your science tells you." He zoomed in on the space between their galaxy and its nearest neighbor. "Your science is incomplete. There are things in the void. Entities that exist in ways we still don't fully understand. We call them the Hollow Ones." The display changed. Korvast watched as sensor data played, showing something that hurt to look at. It was a shape that wasn't a shape, a presence that registered on instruments but couldn't be properly visualized. It moved through space in directions that didn't exist, leaving distortions in its wake. "This was our first contact," Stone said quietly. 90 years after we settled the edge, one of our deep space mining operations went dark. When we sent ships to investigate, we found this. The footage showed a mining station torn apart, but not destroyed by weapons or collision. It looked like it had been unraveled, pulled apart at the molecular level, scattered across space in patterns that formed incomprehensible symbols. 17,000 people worked at that station, Stone continued. We found no bodies. Just structures turned inside out and equipment reformed into shapes that shouldn't be possible under known physics. Thera made a sound of distress. Other delegation members shifted uncomfortably. Korvast kept his expression neutral, but his hands clenched. We investigated, Stone said. Sent probes into the intergalactic void. Most never returned. Those that did brought back data that didn't make sense. Evidence of massive structures in the darkness. Entities that appeared to be made of dark matter itself, operating according to laws of physics we don't understand. Another display appeared. This one showed a timeline stretching back 2,000 years. The Hollow Ones probe our galaxy periodically. Sometimes decades pass between incidents. Sometimes only months. They test our defenses, our responses. They learn. He pulled up footage from different engagements. Corvast watched in horror as human fleets engaged things that barely registered as physical. Weapons passed through them without effect. Ships were consumed by darkness that spread like infection. In one clip, an entire habitat was pulled into something that looked like a tear in space itself. And when the tear closed, the habitat was simply gone. We learned to fight them, Stone said. It took centuries and cost billions of lives. We developed weapons based on gravitational manipulation, exotic particle physics, and technologies we only half understand ourselves. We learned that they can be hurt, driven back, even destroyed if you're willing to pay the price. The general pulled up a star chart showing the defensive network. Every relay station you found is a weapons platform. Every mining operation near a dying star is also monitoring for incursions. Every habitat is built to be evacuated and, if necessary, used as a weapon. We've fortified the entire edge of the galaxy. Why didn't you tell anyone? Corvast demanded. Why keep this secret? Stone looked at him with tired eyes. We didn't know you existed until you contacted us. Our sensors are pointed outward, toward the void. We weren't looking into the galaxy. When we finally detected signals from the core worlds, we assumed you already knew about the Hollow Ones. We thought every spacefaring civilization must have encountered them. But we haven't, Thera said. In 30,000 years, the Vexhari have found no evidence of such beings. Because we stopped them before they reached you, Stone said simply. 3 times in the last 2 millennia, the Hollow Ones mounted major incursions, coordinated attacks on multiple fronts. Each time they nearly broke through. Each time we held the line. He pulled up records from these events. Corvast saw the casualty numbers and felt sick. Entire fleets destroyed, habitats sacrificed, millions dead in each engagement, and the Council had known nothing. The last major incursion was 40 years ago, Stone continued. We barely stopped it. Used experimental weapons that tore holes in space-time itself. The damage is still healing. We lost 37 habitats and 200,000 ships. The Void remembers us now. They know we're here, and they're getting stronger. The general turned off the displays and faced the delegation directly. We've held this line for 2,000 years. We've died in the darkness so you could live in the light. We didn't ask for recognition or help because we thought you either knew and couldn't assist or didn't care. We've been alone in this fight since the beginning. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a challenge. But now you know. Now you understand what exists beyond the edge, what we face every day. So the question isn't why we didn't tell you. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Silence filled the room. Corvast looked at his fellow council members and saw shock, disbelief, and fear on their faces. The comfortable galaxy they'd known, mapped, and controlled for millennia was built on a lie, or rather, on ignorance of a truth that humanity had been shielding them from. You say they're getting stronger, Corvast said finally. What happens if you can't hold them back? Stone's expression turned grim. Then everything in this galaxy becomes like that mining station. Unraveled, consumed, reformed into something that serves the Hollow Ones. We've seen it happen in our deep void probes. Other galaxies, or what's left of them. Dead spirals where something went wrong, where the defenses failed. He pulled up one final image. A galaxy that looked like theirs, but wrong. Dark. Hollow. The stars still shone, but in patterns that hurt to perceive. Arranged in formations that suggested terrible intelligence. We don't know what they want. Stone said quietly. We don't know why they do this. We only know they can be stopped. And that we've been stopping them. Alone. Until now. The implication hung in the air, unspoken but clear. Humanity had carried this burden for 2,000 years. They'd paid a price beyond measure. And now the galaxy faced a choice. Stand with humanity against the darkness, or continue living in ignorant peace while others died to maintain that peace. Corvast knew that whatever the Council decided, nothing would ever be the same again. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 50 species shouted at each other, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Chen Wei, calm and silent, waiting for order to return. High Commander Zarthex of the Vexhari Empire slammed his fist on the podium. This is unacceptable. You hide an existential threat from the galaxy, build a military force without authorization, and now demand we simply accept your word? We're not demanding anything, Chen Wei replied evenly. We're informing you of reality. The Hollow Ones exist whether you believe in them or not. Then prove it, Zarthex snarled. Submit your technology to Council inspection. Allow our scientists full access to your installations. If this threat is real, why should you alone control the response? Chen Wei's expression hardened. Because we earned that right with 2,000 years of blood. Because your scientists don't understand the physics involved. Because your military is designed for territorial disputes, not void warfare. You want proof? How many of your species have fought entities that don't follow the laws of physics, you know? Silence fell. Then Council Member Thera spoke, her voice gentle but firm. Ambassador Chen, we understand your people have made sacrifices, but surely you see how this looks. A hidden military power, technology beyond our understanding, and claims of threats we cannot verify. Can you blame us for being cautious? Before Chen Wei could respond, Admiral Korvast stood. The chamber quieted. The Vexhari Admiral had become humanity's unlikely advocate, since witnessing their civilization firsthand. I've seen their installations, Korvast said. I've reviewed their records. The evidence is overwhelming. But more than that, I've seen how they live. Every habitat built to withstand attack. Every civilian trained in emergency protocols. Children who grow up learning evacuation routes. This isn't a civilization preparing for war. It's one that has never known peace. Pretty words, Zarthex sneered. But words don't. The alarm cut him off. Not just in the chamber, but everywhere. Every communication device, every display screen, every system connected to the galactic network flashed the same warning. Void incursion detected. Chen Wei's face drained of color. She activated her personal communicator. Chen to Defense Command. Confirm status. A human voice responded, tense and urgent. Confirmed, Ambassador. Major incursion at Sector 447. Class 5 entity, largest we've detected in 40 years. It's already through the outer defense line and accelerating toward inhabited systems. Send everything we have. Full mobilization. Already deployed, ma'am. But this thing is moving fast and adapting to our countermeasures. We need at least 6 hours to get sufficient forces in position. It'll reach the Forge Station cluster in 3. Chen Wei turned to the Council, her diplomatic mask falling away to reveal the warrior beneath. You want proof? It's coming. Sector 447 is 3 systems away from Council space. If we don't stop it, you'll get all the proof you can handle. Zarthex hesitated. This could be a deception. A way to force our cooperation. Then don't cooperate, Chen Wei said coldly.
Stay here, stay safe, and watch what happens when we fail.
But if you have any courage, any desire to actually see the truth, Admiral Korvast, bring your fleet. You wanted to understand what we face. Now's your chance. Korvast didn't hesitate. My ships will follow yours. You have no authority to, Zarthex began. I have the authority of command, Korvast interrupted, and the responsibility to investigate potential threats to the Empire. Unless you'd like to explain to the Emperor why you prevented the military from responding to a possible crisis. The 2 Vexhari locked eyes. Finally, Zarthex looked away. 3 hours later, Korvast stood on the bridge of his flagship as it emerged from faster-than-light travel. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Hollow One appeared on sensors as something that shouldn't exist. Visual displays showed a shape that hurt to perceive. A mass of darkness that seemed to fold in on itself infinitely, surrounded by distortions in space that made nearby stars appear warped. It was massive, larger than any ship, any station, any natural object Korvast had ever encountered. Human fleets swarmed around it like insects around a predator. They fired weapons that bent space itself, that manipulated gravity, that released particles Korvast's sensors couldn't identify. Some shots seemed to hurt it. The darkness writhed and contracted. But it kept advancing, moving toward a distant cluster of lights that Korvast realized were human habitats. All vessels, Maintain formation Delta 7. General Stone's voice commanded across the tactical network. Focus fire on the leading edge. Don't let it split. But even as Stone spoke, the entity did split or multiplied or somehow became multiple things at once. Tendrils of darkness reached out, faster than should be possible, and touched a human destroyer. The ship's hull began to unravel, metal peeling away in strips that reformed into geometric patterns in the void. Striker 7 is gone, someone reported, their voice steady despite the horror. Crew did not evacuate in time. 300 people dead in seconds. Corvast felt his hands shaking. Begin gravitational collapse procedure, Stone ordered. All civilian vessels evacuate to minimum safe distance. Corvast watched as the human fleet enacted a maneuver he'd never seen. Ships positioned themselves in a sphere around the entity and activated some kind of technology that created artificial gravitational wells. The space around the hollow one began to collapse inward, crushing it from all sides. The entity screamed. There was no sound in space, but every sensor on every ship registered something. A pulse of energy, a distortion, a wrongness that made instruments fail and crew members cry out in pain. "It's working," someone shouted. "The compression is holding." Then the entity adapted. The darkness shifted, flowed, and suddenly it was pulling itself through the artificial gravity, using the very trap meant to contain it as a pathway. It reached out and touched 3 more ships. They vanished, not destroyed but simply erased as if they'd never existed. "All ships weapons free," Stone commanded. "Hit it with everything, now!" The human fleet opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Space lit up with energies that made Corvast's sensors overload, and slowly, painfully, the entity began to retreat, pulling back from the onslaught, withdrawing into itself. "It's running," Corvast breathed. "No," Chenwei said from her position on a human command ship. "It's learning." It got what it came for. Data on our current defensive capabilities. Next time it'll be ready for what we use today. The entity folded in on itself and vanished, leaving behind only distorted space and debris from the destroyed ships. The human fleet hung in space, damaged and diminished but victorious. Corvast looked at his tactical display. The battle had lasted 17 minutes. In that time, humanity had lost 43 ships and nearly 10,000 personnel. They'd deployed weapons that violated several council treaties on dangerous technology. They'd fought something that shouldn't exist according to known science, and they'd won. Barely. He opened a channel to his entire fleet. "Record everything you've witnessed. When we return to council space, there can be no doubt, no debate. Tell them what you saw. Tell them what humanity faces. And tell them we can no longer afford to be ignorant." He looked out at the human vessels, battered but maintaining formation, already beginning rescue operations for survivors. These people fought this kind of battle regularly. They lost thousands and called it a minor incursion. They sacrificed ships worth fortunes and moved on to the next threat, and they'd done it alone for 2,000 years. The price of the Council's peaceful paradise, Corvast realized, had always been paid by someone else, now that bill was coming due. Admiral Corvast's testimony shook the galaxy. He stood before billions watching across every world, every station, and showed them the unedited footage. The hollow one writhing in darkness. Human ships dying, the thing that should not exist but did. Within days, the Vexhari Empire's authority crumbled. Citizens demanded answers. How had their leaders missed this? Why had they dismissed humanity's warnings? Other species joined the outcry. The comfortable lies that had sustained galactic civilization for millennia fell apart. New alliances formed rapidly. The Million Collective offered their scientific expertise. The Kresh clans, warriors who had grown soft in peacetime, remembered their heritage and sent fleets to the edge. The Solarian Assembly pledged resources. Not everyone helped. Some species retreated into isolationism, refusing to believe. But enough answered the call. Chenwei stood in the rebuilt Defense Command, watching species that had never cooperated now working side by side. "We're ready for the next stage?" she asked General Stone. Stone nodded grimly. "As ready as we'll ever be. Intelligence suggests they're coming in force this time. Multiple entities coordinated assault. They've spent 40 years studying us. They know our tactics now. How long? 72 hours, maybe less." Across the edge of the galaxy, humanity and their new allies prepared. Council ships took positions alongside human vessels, their crews trained hastily in void warfare tactics. Mixed research teams worked frantically to adapt human weapons for council use. It wasn't enough, it couldn't be enough, but it was more than humanity had ever had before. The Hollow Ones came in a wave of darkness that eclipsed stars. 7 entities breached the rim simultaneously, larger and more coordinated than any previous incursion. They moved with terrible intelligence, adapting instantly to defensive measures, splitting and reforming to avoid concentrated fire. Where they passed, space itself warped and twisted. "All forces engage," Stone commanded. The battle joined across 1,000 light-years of space. Human experimental weapons tore at reality itself, creating localized singularities, reversing entropy, manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe. Council ships, their conventional weapons useless against void entities, served as support, evacuating civilians, supplying ammunition, running interference. Admiral Korvast commanded a Vexhari task force protecting a human mining operation near a dying star. When a Hollow One tendril reached toward the facility, he watched human engineers do something insane. They destabilized the star itself, causing it to flare violently. The radiation burst caught the entity and it recoiled, wounded by energies that would have destroyed any normal ship. "They're using stars as weapons," his tactical officer whispered in awe. Korvast understood then. Truly understood. Humanity hadn't just adapted to the Edge's harsh environment. They'd learned to weaponize it. Every dying star, every black hole, every radiation field was a potential weapon to someone who knew how to use it. But it wasn't enough. The Hollow Ones kept coming, and humanity was running out of ships, out of personnel, out of options. "Chen to all forces." Ambassador Chen Wei's voice cut through the tactical chatter. She was aboard a command carrier, coordinating the defense. "We're activating the full network. All civilian personnel, evacuate to designated safe zones. Military vessels maintain defensive positions. When the network activates, it's going to get bright." Korvast pulled up a display showing the entire galactic edge. Every relay station, every defensive platform, every installation was highlighted. There were thousands of them, forming a complete ring around the galaxy. He'd thought they were individual installations. He'd been wrong. They were all parts of one enormous machine. "Network activation in 30 seconds, Chen Wei announced. All hands brace for gravitational distortion." Korvast watched as the relay stations began to pulse with light. The light spread along invisible connections linking one station to another, creating a web of energy that stretched across the entire rim. At key points, human vessels positioned themselves not to fight but to serve as focusing nodes. "What are they doing?" his sensor officer asked. Korvast realized with growing horror and awe. "They're turning the entire edge into a weapon." The network activated fully. Every dying star within the defensive perimeter flared simultaneously. Black holes began pulling harder, their accretion disks blazing with impossible energies. Neutron stars emitted coherent beams of radiation. The exotic physics of the galactic edge, the harsh and deadly environment humanity had learned to master, all focused inward toward the breaching Hollow Ones. The entities tried to adapt, tried to flee, but they were surrounded by coordinated stellar phenomena. Where they moved, humanity directed another weapon. Gravity wells trapped them. Radiation seared them. The very fabric of space, manipulated by technologies built over 2 millennia of desperate research, tightened around them like a net. The cost was devastating. Korvast saw human habitats go dark as their power supplies were diverted to the network. Ships that served as focusing nodes burned out, their crews sacrificing themselves to maintain the connection. Entire systems were abandoned, their populations evacuated, their resources consumed by the defense. "Forge station is offline," someone reported. Chen Wei's home, where Korvast had first seen humanity's impossible cities. Gone, sacrificed to power the network, but the line held. The entities, caught in a cage of weaponized stellar physics, began to break apart. Their darkness fragmented, scattered, driven back toward the intergalactic void. One by one they retreated or were destroyed until the last disappeared beyond the rim. Silence fell across the tactical channels. For several long moments no one spoke. Then reports began flooding in. Casualty counts, damage assessments. List after list of losses. 27 habitats destroyed or evacuated. 40,000 ships lost. 2 million dead. The numbers kept climbing, and Korvast felt each one like a physical blow. But humanity had held. The galaxy was safe, and this time they hadn't fought alone. 3 months later, Corvus stood in the rebuilt council chamber. The governing body had been reorganized, the old power structures replaced by new ones that acknowledged reality. Representatives from the Edge territories now sat alongside those from core worlds. Human advisors consulted on defense matters. The galaxy had changed. Chen Wei stood before the assembly, and when she spoke, everyone listened. "We've held the line for 2,000 years, she said. "We've paid a price you're only now beginning to understand. But we never asked for gratitude or recognition. We did what needed to be done because no one else could." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the chamber. "The Hollow Ones will return. They always do. But now when they come, they'll find more than just humanity waiting. They'll find a galaxy that has learned to defend itself, a civilization that understands the price of peace and is willing to pay it." Corvust rose to speak, addressing the assembly. "We thought the Edge was empty because we never bothered to look. We thought space ended where the light faded. Humanity taught us differently." He turned to look at Chen Wei, at the other human representatives, at the new council that represented a united galaxy. "Civilization doesn't end at the Edge. That's where it begins. That's where the real guardians stand, watching the darkness, ensuring the light survives." The assembly approved new measures. Resources would flow to the Edge territories. Council species would maintain permanent fleets in the defensive network. Research would focus on understanding and combating the Hollow Ones. The comfortable isolation of the core worlds was over. Outside, visible through the chamber's massive windows, the galactic edge gleamed. The defensive network still operated, repaired and strengthened with contributions from dozens of species. Where humanity had once stood alone, now a united galaxy stood together. The Edge was no longer seen as wasteland. It was sacred ground, the place where civilization was defended, where humanity had held the line, where the future of the galaxy was decided every day. Chen Wei stood at the window beside Corvust, watching the distant lights of the rim. "Do you think we can hold them permanently?" Corvust considered. "I don't know, but I know we have a better chance together than you did alone." She smiled slightly. "That's all we ever wanted. Not to be alone in the dark anymore." Far beyond the rim, in the intergalactic void, the Hollow Ones watched and waited. They had been driven back but not defeated. They would return as they always did. But when they came again, they would find something new, a galaxy united, prepared, and willing to defend itself. The stars at the Edge burned bright, a crown of light marking the boundary between civilization and void. Humanity had built that crown with their blood and sacrifice. Now, together with their new allies, they would ensure it never dimmed. The galaxy had learned that empty space was never truly empty. Darkness always held something waiting. But light, when shared and defended, could push back that darkness. Perhaps not forever, but for today, for tomorrow, for as long as brave souls stood at the Edge and refused to yield. The age of isolation was over. The age of unity had begun, and at the Edge, where stars met void, humanity's revelations had indeed split the stars asunder, not in destruction, but in the forging of something greater than any one species could build alone, a galaxy ready to face the darkness, together. The year was 2145, and Earth had known about alien life for 20 years. The ships had come without warning, appearing in the sky above major cities around the world. Humans had reacted with fear at first, then wonder, and finally with the slow realization that they were very small fish in a very large pond. Adam Carter stood at the window of his small apartment, looking out at the Chicago skyline where an alien ship now floated permanently above the lake. He had been just a kid when they first arrived. Now at 35, he was a veteran of Earth's military conflicts with 15 years of Navy SEAL experience that seemed increasingly pointless in this new world. His phone buzzed. The message was brief. Opportunity for qualified personnel. Confederation recruiting today, downtown Hilton, Suite 405. Adam almost ignored it. The aliens, the Confederation as they called themselves, rarely had anything to offer regular humans. Most of their attention went to scientists and government officials. But something made him grab his jacket. Maybe it was the boredom. Maybe it was the growing sense that Earth was being left behind while the galaxy moved on. 3 hours later, Adam sat in an ornate hotel suite across from a being that resembled a blue-skinned humanoid with 4 arms and eyes that glowed faintly, yellow. Lieutenant Carter, the alien said, its translator device making the voice sound almost human. I am Recruitment Officer Traz. Your military record is most impressive. Adam nodded but said nothing. He had learned that aliens often had different ideas about conversation flow. The Confederation is forming special units, Traz continued. We call them external asset teams. You would call them mercenaries. You're hiring human mercenaries? Adam asked, unable to hide his surprise. We are forming mixed species units from non-member worlds. Your Earth is not yet a member of the Confederation, but some of your people have skills we find useful. Adam leaned forward. What's the catch? Traz's mouth formed what might have been a smile. Direct. Good. The catch, as you say, is that the work is dangerous. The Confederation has been at war with the Crixian Empire for centuries. We need soldiers willing to take on missions others cannot. And what do we get in return? Payment in Confederation credits, advanced medical care, and should you survive the standard 10-year contract, citizenship for you and your family. Citizenship. The word hung in the air. It meant access to technology centuries beyond Earth's development. It meant the stars. Adam thought for just a moment before asking, when do we start? 1 month later, Adam stepped off a transport ship alongside 49 other humans, all military veterans from countries around Earth. The training facility stretched before them, a massive complex built into the side of a mountain on a world whose name they couldn't pronounce. Welcome to what will likely be your death, said a gravelly voice. The speaker was nearly 7 feet tall with gray, rock-like skin and eyes that burned orange. Commander Kresh, as he introduced himself, was a Valkyrie, a species known for their toughness and direct manner. You soft-skins are here because we need bodies, Kresh continued, walking slowly in front of the human line. The Confederation needs soldiers who are disposable. A woman near Adam stiffened. Kelly Ross, former Army Ranger. Adam had met her. During processing on the journey here, we're here to fight, Kelly said firmly, not to be sacrificed. Kresh moved with surprising speed, stopping inches from Kelly's face. You will fight. You will likely die. That is the reality of war against the Crixians. The only question is whether you will die uselessly or take some of them with you. The next day, training began. The humans quickly discovered they weren't the only mercenaries being recruited. There were 6 other alien species in their training group, all from worlds not yet part of the Confederation. The Brukai were massive 4-armed beings with thick hides that could resist small weapons fire. The Venturi were slender and quick, able to move faster than human eyes could track. The Talarians had natural telepathic abilities that made them excellent at coordination. The Morith could see in complete darkness and had reflexes twice as fast as humans. The Dresh had redundant organ systems that made them nearly impossible to kill with a single shot. And the Tsar were shapeshifters, who could blend into almost any environment. Compared to these aliens, humans seemed painfully average. No special abilities. No natural armor, no enhanced senses. Remind me again why they recruited us, muttered Sam Green, a former Marine who had become Adam's bunkmate. Cannon fodder, replied Adam, watching as a Brukai easily lifted a weight that would crush a human. The training was brutal. Every day started before dawn and ended long after dark. They learned to use Confederation weapons, studied Crixian tactics, and ran combat simulations that left them bruised and exhausted, and the humans lost. They lost every training exercise, every simulation, every contest. They were always a step behind, always a bit too slow, always the first to fall. The humans are weak, Adam overheard a Venturi say after they had once again finished last in a training run. They will not survive their first real battle. Even among the mercenaries, a hierarchy had formed. The humans were at the bottom. After 3 weeks, Commander Kresh called the human squad together. You are now Earthborn Unit Alpha, he announced. Your first mission assignment has been processed. A hologram appeared showing a dense jungle world with 3 moons. Nexus 6, a mining planet currently occupied by Crixian forces. Your mission is to disable the planetary defense grid to allow our forces to land. Adam studied the hologram. Something about this didn't feel right. "Sir, what's the expected resistance?" Kresh's orange eyes fixed on him. "1 Crixian battalion. Standard defenses." "And our insertion plan?" asked Kelly. "Drops you 50 miles from the target. You will make your way on foot to avoid detection." As the briefing continued, Adam noticed details that didn't add up. The operation seemed poorly planned. The intelligence was vague. The extraction plan almost non-existent. Later that night, unable to sleep, Adam slipped out of the barracks. He made his way toward the command center, staying in the shadows as he'd been trained. Outside Kresh's office, he heard voices. "The humans won't last a day on Nexus 6, someone was saying. "They don't need to," replied Kresh. "If they trigger the perimeter alarms, we'll know where the blind spots are in the Crixian defense network." "Expendable assets," the first voice. "Agreed. Precisely. The Brukai squad will be ready for the real mission once we have the data from the human insertion." Adam slipped away, his mind racing. It was a suicide mission. They weren't being sent to disable anything. They were being sent to die so the Confederation could gather intelligence. Back at the barracks, he woke Kelly, Sam, and a few others he had come to trust. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "We're being set up to fail, but I think I have a plan that might keep us alive and show these aliens exactly what humans can do." 3 months had passed since Adam Carter discovered the truth about their mission. Now, Earthborn Unit Alpha hovered in the atmosphere of Nexus 6, the jungle planet spread out below them like a vast green ocean. The dropship shuddered as it hit turbulence. "Final equipment check," Adam said, looking at the 12 humans who made up his squad. Their training had been brutal, but it had also forged them into a tight unit. Each person had found their role, their strength. Kelly Ross checked her sniper rifle one last time. Sam Green went over the explosives. Olivia Ward, their medic, made sure everyone had their emergency kits. Ben Howard, communications expert, tested their encrypted channels. "Remember," Adam said quietly, "they expect us to fail. They expect us to die. Let's prove them wrong." The dropship doors opened. One by one, they jumped into the hot, humid air of Nexus 6. They landed in a small clearing 5 miles from their intended drop zone, Adam's first change to the original plan. If the Confederation was monitoring them as bait, best not to be exactly where they were expected. "Status?" Adam asked once they had all regrouped. "All present, minimal equipment damage," Kelly reported. She was his second in command, the one he trusted most. The jungle around them buzzed with strange sounds. Massive trees reached hundreds of feet into the sky, their trunks wider than Earth's oldest redwoods. The air smelled of unfamiliar plants and decay. "According to the briefing, we have 7 days to reach the defense grid control station," Ben said, checking his data pad. 50 miles through this." He gestured at the dense vegetation. Adam nodded. "We move in pairs, standard leapfrog pattern. Keep communications minimal. We're not here to fight unless necessary." They moved through the jungle like ghosts. The humans' smaller size compared to most of the other mercenary species now became an advantage, letting them slip through tight spaces in the undergrowth. On the second day, they found their first sign of Crixian presence, a patrol moving through the jungle. From their hiding spots, the humans observed carefully. The Crixians were tall, reptilian beings with natural armor plates and eyes that swiveled independently. They carried plasma rifles and moved with military precision. 8 of them standard patrol formation, Kelly whispered from her observation point. Adam made the decision to avoid contact. They slipped away and continued their journey, making a wide circle around the patrol route. On the 4th day, they came across something unexpected: the wreckage of a ship partially buried in the jungle. The markings identified it as belonging to the Venturi, one of the mercenary species they had trained with. "This must be from one of the previous attempts," Sam said as they carefully approached the crash site. Inside the wreckage, they found bodies, not just Venturi but Brukai as well, another mercenary team sent before them. "They didn't just fail," Olivia said as she examined the remains. "They were massacred." Adam found a partially intact datapad and handed it to Ben, who managed to extract some information. "This isn't good," Ben said after a few minutes. "According to this, there isn't just one Crixian battalion on this planet. There are at least 3, and the defense grid is far more complex than we were told." The humans looked at each other. Their suspicions confirmed. They had been sent on a mission designed to fail, sent to die. "So what do we do?" Sam asked. "Call for extraction?" Adam shook his head. "And prove them right about us? No. We adjust." That night, they formed a new plan. Instead of a frontal approach to the defense grid control station, they would use what humans had always excelled at: improvisation and deception. On the 5th day, they captured a Crixian scout. It took 3 of them to subdue the larger alien, but they managed it without killing him. Ben, who had studied Crixian language patterns during training, interrogated their prisoner. They learned that the defense grid had a weakness. It needed to reset once every local day, creating a 30-second window where it was vulnerable. On the 6th day, they reached the perimeter of the control station. It was heavily guarded, much more than they had been told to expect. At least 50 Crixian soldiers patrolled the area, with automated turrets covering every approach. "A direct assault would be suicide," Kelly said as they observed from a hidden position. "Then we don't assault," Adam replied. "We infiltrate." That night, they put their plan into action. Sam and 2 others placed small explosives at various points around the perimeter, timed to go off in sequence. Ben hacked into the Crixian communication system using codes they had gotten from their prisoner. Olivia prepared medical patches that would temporarily block their heat signatures from Crixian scanners. Just before dawn, when the defense grid would reset, they triggered the first explosion, far from where they actually planned to enter. As expected, the Crixians responded, sending troops to investigate. A second explosion drew more away. A third created even more confusion. Meanwhile, Adam, Kelly, and Ben slipped through the now thinned perimeter defenses. They entered the control station through a maintenance tunnel their prisoner had revealed. Inside, they encountered 3 Crixian technicians. Kelly took them down with silent stun shots before they could raise an alarm. Ben worked quickly at the main console. "I need 5 minutes," he whispered. Outside, the diversions continued. Sam and the others kept triggering small explosions at different locations, making it seem like a much larger force was attacking from multiple directions. 3 minutes until the next grid reset, Ben warned. Adam watched the door while Kelly covered the windows. They could hear the chaos outside, as the Crixians struggled to respond to what they thought was a major assault. "Done," Ben finally said. "When the grid resets, instead of coming back online normally, it will stay down." They slipped out the way they had come in. By the time the Crixians realized what had happened, the humans were already gone, melting, back into the jungle. From their rally point 5 miles away, they watched as the sky filled with Confederation ships. The defense grid was down. Their mission, the one they were supposed to fail, was a success. 3 days later, they were back on the Confederation base. Commander Kresh stared at them with his orange eyes wide in disbelief. "How?" he asked, simply when Adam delivered their report. "We adapted," Adam replied. "That's what humans do." Word spread quickly through the Confederation forces. The mission that had claimed 5 previous mercenary teams had been completed by the supposedly weak humans. Earthborn Unit Alpha had succeeded where the stronger, faster aliens had failed. And for the first time, when humans walked through the halls of the base, the other species didn't look at them with contempt. They looked at them with something new, respect tinged with confusion and perhaps a touch of fear. 1 year had passed since Earthborn Unit Alpha's success on Nexus 6. Now there were 10 human units serving the Confederation, all showing the same surprising effectiveness that defied explanation. Commander Kresh stood in the observation room, watching Earthborn Unit Delta train. As the military officer assigned to oversee all human forces, he had spent months trying to understand what made these physically unremarkable beings so effective in combat. "Still studying your pets, Commander?" asked Admiral Zux, a high-ranking Confederation officer who had just entered the room. Kresh's orange eyes narrowed. "They are not pets. They are soldiers. Good ones. Below them, Captain Sophia Wright led her unit through a combat exercise. She was smaller than most of her squad, with short brown hair and quick movements. Despite her size, she commanded complete respect from her team. Their physical capabilities are average at best, Zuck said, watching a human male struggle to lift a weight that a Brukai child could handle. Their senses are dull compared to the Morith. They lack the natural armor of the Crixians. They cannot move as fast as the Venturi. What makes them special? Kresh had asked himself the same question many times. I intend to find out, he said. I am accompanying Unit Delta on their next mission. The mission was to extract a captured Confederation scientist from a Crixian research station. The scientist, a Talarian named Vex Noor, had been developing new shield technology when he was captured 3 weeks ago. As Kresh watched the humans prepare, he noted behaviors that puzzled him. They joked about death. They spent hours discussing unlikely scenarios. They formed bonds quickly, treating newly assigned squad members like old friends within days. Why do you waste time planning for events with less than 2% probability? Kresh asked Captain Wright, as she outlined a contingency plan for a station-wide power failure. Sophia looked up from her datapad. Because 2% isn't zero, and because the plans that save your life are usually the ones you didn't think you'd need. The team of 8 humans plus Kresh departed on a stealth ship the next day. Their target was a small research station orbiting the gas giant Keltor 7. Intelligence suggested minimal defenses. The Crixians relied on secrecy rather than force to protect this location. As they approached in their stealth ship, Ben Howard, who had been transferred to this unit after his success with Unit Alpha, scanned the station. Something's not right, he said, frowning at his equipment. I'm picking up way more power signatures than expected, and the defense grid is much stronger than intelligence reported. Kresh moved to look at the scanner. Could be equipment malfunction. Ben shook his head. No, sir. This is accurate. That station has been significantly upgraded since our last intel. Captain Wright gathered her team. This changes things. New plan. Kresh watched with growing interest as the humans quickly adapted their approach. Instead of their original insertion point, they would now use a maintenance airlock on the station's underside. Instead of a direct route to the detention area, they would take a longer path through the service corridors. The Crixians know we're coming, Sophia said plainly. This is a trap. If it is a trap, we should abort, Kresh stated. This was standard Confederation protocol. The humans exchanged glances. Then Sophia smiled. A gesture Kresh had learned indicated not just happiness, but sometimes determination or even aggression. No, she said. If they're expecting us, let's give them something unexpected. We're switching to Plan Z. Plan Z? Kresh asked. This was not in the briefing materials. That's because we just made it up, Sophia replied. Here's what we're going to do. The plan she outlined seemed completely irrational to Kresh. Instead of stealth, they would announce their presence. Instead of avoiding alarms, they would trigger them deliberately. Instead of moving as a unit, they would split up and take different routes. This is madness, Kresh said when she finished. You will all be captured or killed. Maybe, Sophia admitted. But they won't be expecting madness, they'll be expecting logic. The mission began with their stealth ship firing upon the station's communications array, an act that immediately announced their presence. Alarms blared as they docked, not at the planned maintenance airlock, but at a primary cargo bay. The team rushed out, firing weapons and creating as much noise as possible. They moved deeper into the station, drawing Crixian forces after them. Meanwhile, Sophia, Ben, and Kresh slipped away in the opposite direction, using the confusion to move toward the detention level. Your team members are sacrificing themselves, Kresh said as they moved through the now mostly empty corridors. No, Sophia replied calmly. They're creating a diversion. There's a difference. They reached the detention level and found it suspiciously unguarded. The cell where the scientist was supposedly held was empty. As I suspected, Kresh said. This was indeed a trap. Ben was scanning the walls with a handheld device. "The real detention block is hidden," he said. "Behind this wall, there's a secret passage." They found the hidden door and passed through into a corridor not on any station schematics. At the end was a secure door, behind which they found not just the Talarian scientist they had come for, but 3 other Confederation prisoners. As well. "How did you know?" Kresh asked as they freed the prisoners. "We didn't," Sophia admitted. "But human history is full of secret prisons and hidden captives. We guessed the Crixians might think the same way we do." As they made their way back, station-wide, alerts indicated that multiple escape pods had been launched. The Crixians were diverting forces to recapture these pods. "Your team?" Kresh asked. Sophia nodded. "Empty pods. Another diversion." They reached the cargo bay to find their ship secured by the rest of the team, who had circled back after leading the Crixian forces on a wild chase through the station. As they escaped, Kresh watched the humans with new understanding. They had succeeded not despite their seemingly chaotic approach, but because of it. Back at the Confederation base, Kresh filed his report. In it, he wrote, "The humans' greatest strength appears to be what we would consider their greatest weakness, their unpredictability. They do not follow optimal paths. They create chaos deliberately. They plan for the improbable. Most concerning of all, they seem to thrive in conditions that would cause other species to break down." Word of the mission's success spread quickly. The story grew with each telling, how humans had brazenly attacked a Crixian station, freed multiple prisoners, and escaped without a single casualty. In the mercenary bars across Confederation space, soldiers began sharing stories about the Earthborn units. When such stories started, even the bravest alien mercenaries would grow quiet, listening with a mixture of disbelief and growing respect and fear. Though none would admit it, there was definitely fear. 5 years had passed since the first Earthborn unit was formed. The dingy bar on Outpost Station 12 was filled with mercenaries from a dozen different species. This remote space station served as a neutral ground where soldiers of fortune could rest between missions. In a dark corner sat a group of Tarsian mercenaries. They were reptilian beings with scales that shifted color slightly based on their moods. Their leader, Drex, was telling war stories to a younger Tarsian who had recently joined their crew. "Next week we hit the human outpost on Vega Prime," the young Tarsian said, showing sharp teeth in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Should be easy money. Humans are soft." The older Tarsians went quiet. Their scales darkened to a deep blue, a sign of fear among their kind. Drex took a long drink from his cup before speaking. "You've never faced humans before, have you?" The young one's scales flashed a confident orange. "How tough can they be? They have no natural weapons, no armor. They're just walking meat." An older Tarsian named Krell made a low hissing sound. "I faced Earthborn Unit Gamma on Terex Prime. There were 20 of us and 8 of them." Now other mercenaries in the bar were listening too. Stories about Earthborn units always drew attention. "Terex Prime is an ice world," Krell continued. "Temperatures that should kill warm-blooded species. We thought this would be our advantage. We were wrong." Krell described how his team had tracked the humans across frozen wastelands, how they had set up a perfect ambush near a narrow pass between ice cliffs. "We had them trapped, no way out. We opened fire." Krell's voice dropped lower. "They didn't run. They didn't surrender. The first thing they did was shoot at the ice above us, created an avalanche that buried half our force." The young Tarsian's scales were no longer orange. "Lucky shot." "No," Krell said firmly. "Planned. They led us there deliberately. Used our own trap against us." From another table, a Venturi mercenary with silver skin joined the conversation. "On Dracon 3, I saw a human soldier cut off from his unit. Surrounded. 6 hours he held position. 6 hours with a broken leg and limited ammo." "How did he survive?" someone asked. "He didn't," the Venturi replied. "But he took 7 of our best with him, and he was smiling at the end. Smiling." More stories followed. A Brukai told of humans using psychological warfare tactics that seemed to border on cruelty. A Morith described humans functioning without sleep for days. A czar spoke of human soldiers sacrificing themselves for teammates they'd known for mere weeks. The Crixian Empire now offers triple payment for missions where humans might be present, Drek said. Triple, think about that. The young Tarsian's scales had shifted to pale gray. Uncertainty. But why? What makes them so different? At that moment, the bar door opened and 3 humans walked in. The room went silent. They were Earthborn Unit Alpha members, recognizable by their distinctive black and silver uniforms. The leader was Adam Carter, now a major, his face bearing scars that hadn't been there 5 years ago. The humans seemed not to notice the silence as they made their way to the bar, or perhaps they were simply used to it. "That's Major Carter," whispered Drex. "His unit has the highest success rate in Confederation history." Meanwhile, on the Confederation command ship Destiny, Colonel Adam Carter stood before the War Council. 5 years had changed him. He was leaner, harder, with gray beginning to show in his dark hair. The left side of his face bore burn scars from a mission 2 years ago. The council consisted of high-ranking officers from all major Confederation species. At the center sat Supreme Commander Zelos, an ancient Talarian whose telepathic abilities had guided the Confederation for decades. "Colonel Carter," Zelos began, "we have been analyzing what makes human units so effective. Our findings are interesting." A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing combat data, psychological profiles, and mission results. "At first we believed it was simply your species' unpredictability," Zelos continued. "But that is only part of the picture. What truly sets humans apart is something more complex." The display shifted to show human brain scans next to those of other species. "Most sentient species excel at one of 2 approaches," explained a Valkyrie scientist. "Either they are highly individualistic like the Venturi, or they are completely collective like the Tsar. Humans somehow manage both simultaneously." Adam looked at the data with interest. He had never thought of humans as special. To him, they were simply doing what came naturally. "Your social structures allow for fierce individualism and complete, selfless cooperation at the same time," the scientist continued. "In combat situations, this creates units that can both follow orders exactly and improvise when needed, without losing cohesion." Adam thought about his team, about Kelly, who would argue with him fiercely during planning but follow his orders without question once a mission began, about Sam, who liked to work alone but would risk his life without hesitation for any team member. "There is something else," Zelos said, leaning forward. "Something we find most concerning. Humans appear to have evolved differently than any other known species." The hologram showed evolutionary trees for various species. "Most intelligent species evolve by overcoming environmental challenges or predators," the Valkyrie scientist explained. "Their primary threats were forces of nature or other species." Adam nodded, wondering where this was going. "Humans are different," Zelos said. "Your primary evolutionary pressure was yourselves. You competed against your own kind, forcing constant adaptation and counter-adaptation. This has no parallel among Confederation species." The council chamber was silent for a moment. Then Supreme Commander Zelos spoke again. "The Confederation wishes to formally offer Earth membership, Colonel Carter. Full membership, not the probationary status usually granted to developing worlds." Adam was stunned. Earth had been told it would take at least a century to reach full membership status. "Why now?" he asked. Zelos's expression was unreadable. "Because we believe it is in the Confederation's best interest to have humans fully integrated into our society." The alternative. The alternative was left unspoken, but Adam understood. The Confederation feared what might happen if humans remained on the outside, selling their services to the highest bidder. They were being brought in not just as allies, but to ensure they didn't become enemies. As Adam left the council chamber, he thought about how far humans had come in 5 years. From dismissed as weak, to feared and respected enough that the Confederation was changing its own rules. The legend of Earthborn units was growing, and with it the uneasy question that many alien species were beginning to ask. What would happen if these unpredictable, adaptable beings ever turned against them? 10 years had passed since the first Earthborn unit was formed. Earth had changed dramatically in that time. Confederation technology had transformed human society. Gleaming cities reached into the clouds. Diseases that once claimed millions of lives each year were now easily cured. Humans had established colonies on 12 worlds with more planned each year, but all of that was now in danger. On the bridge of the Earth Defense Command ship Intrepid, General Adam Carter studied the holographic display with grim focus. His hair was fully gray now, his face weathered by a decade of war. The burn scars on the left side of his face had faded somewhat, but remained a reminder of battles past. "They're really coming," said Admiral Kelly Ross, who stood beside him. She had been with him since the beginning, from Earthborn Unit Alpha to the highest ranks of Earth's new military. The display showed 300 warships approaching Earth. The Dark Claw fleet of the Crixian Empire, commanded by High Admiral Zorn. In all the long centuries of the conflict between the Confederation and the Empire, the Dark Claw fleet had never known defeat. "Time to arrival?" Adam asked. 24 hours, Kelly replied. "Confederation reinforcements won't get here for at least 3 days. Earth would face this threat alone." Adam turned to the communications officer. "Send the signal. Operation Last Stand is now active." Throughout the Earth system, hidden defense platforms powered up. Civilian ships that had been secretly modified for war moved into position. On Earth's surface, defense centers prepared for possible ground invasion. "You really think we can win this?" Kelly asked when they were alone. Adam looked at her. "We have to. We've spent 10 years preparing for this moment." The Crixians had launched this desperate offensive for one reason: to eliminate Earth before humans became fully integrated into Confederation society. Their intelligence reports had identified humans as the greatest long-term threat to the Empire. In his quarters, Adam reviewed the final defense plans. Earth had spent the past decade studying Crixian tactics, technology, and psychology. While most of the planet enjoyed the benefits of Confederation membership, a secret program had been developing weapons and strategies specifically designed to counter Crixian forces. "General," his AI assistant announced, "High Admiral Zorn is broadcasting a message to Earth." The screen lit up to show the Crixian commander, a tall, powerfully built reptilian with black scales and eyes like burning coals. "People of Earth," Zorn began, his translator making his voice sound unnaturally smooth. "Your world stands alone. The Confederation cannot save you. Surrender now, and your population will be spared. Resist, and we will turn your cities to ash." Adam didn't respond to the message. Instead, he sent orders to all Earth forces. "Begin deployment of phases 1 through 3. Maintain communication silence." As the Dark Claw fleet approached Earth's orbit, they encountered no resistance. No ships challenged them. No weapons fired. "The humans surrender without a fight?" Zorn asked his officers on the bridge of his flagship, the Emperor's Fist. "No surrender message received, Admiral," replied his second-in-command. "But our scans show their defense fleet has not left orbit." Zorn's eyes narrowed. "A trap, then." "Our intelligence indicates their technology is far inferior to ours," the officer reminded him. "What trap could they possibly set that would threaten the Dark Claw fleet?" "These are humans," Zorn said, almost spitting the word. "Expect the unexpected." As the Crixian fleet moved into Earth orbit, they finally encountered the planet's defenders, a small group of 50 ships that seemed to be their main defense force. "Pathetic," Zorn's weapons officer said. "Their fleet is tiny," but Zorn remained cautious. "Why would they oppose us with such a small force? Begin scanning for cloaked ships or hidden weapons platforms." The scans revealed nothing. The Earth Defense Fleet was exactly what it appeared to be: a hopelessly outmatched force facing a vastly superior enemy. "Fire at will," Zorn ordered. The Crixian weapons blazed. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked toward Earth's ships, but instead of exploding or trying to evade, the Earth vessels shimmered strangely. The Crixian weapons passed right through them. "Holograms!" Zorn shouted. At that moment, the real attack began. Small, one-man fighters emerged from hiding places throughout the debris field that surrounded Earth's orbit. These were not the advanced ships the Crixians had expected, but simpler craft that human pilots could fly manually if their computers were disabled. Simultaneously, civilian cargo ships that had been hiding in plain sight suddenly dropped their disguises, revealing weapons systems. The Crixian fleet, prepared for conventional space warfare, found themselves facing an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. The human ships didn't form battle lines or follow standard tactics. They swarmed like insects, targeting specific weak points that human intelligence had identified in Crixian ship designs. "They're focusing fire on our sensor arrays," reported Zorn's tactical officer, "and targeting our engine exhaust ports. These were not vital systems, but their loss reduced the Crixian ship's efficiency. It was death by 1,000 cuts rather than killing blows." As the space battle raged, Zorn ordered ground forces to land on Earth. But here, too, the humans had prepared surprises. The Crixians found not organized military resistance but a planet where every citizen had been prepared for invasion. In North America, Crixian troops were confused by false signals that led them into ambushes. In Europe, they encountered cities that appeared abandoned but were actually filled with hidden defenders. In Asia, they faced terrain that had been subtly modified to channel them into kill zones. On the Emperor's Fist, Zorn received increasingly desperate reports from his ground commanders. His fleet, while still largely intact, was being worn down by constant harassment from the human forces. Then a small fleet appeared at the edge of the system. Just 20 ships, led by a vessel Zorn recognized, the Intrepid, Earth's flagship. They held back their main force, Zorn realized. "Let them come, we will destroy them." But as the Intrepid approached, Zorn's sensors officer called out in alarm. "Admiral, their weapon systems are impossible." The Intrepid fired. Its main weapon was not the standard Confederation energy beam, but something new, a hybrid technology that combined human ingenuity with Confederation science. The beam cut through the Crixian flagship's shields as if they weren't there. "How?" Zorn demanded. "How did they know the exact frequency to penetrate our shields?" Adam Carter's face appeared on Zorn's screen. "We've been studying you for 10 years, Admiral. We know more about your technology than you do." The Emperor's Fist shuddered as more hits landed. Systems failed throughout the ship. For the first time in his long career, Zorn gave the order he had never expected to give. Retreat. The Dark Claw fleet, the pride of the Crixian Empire, withdrew in disarray. The battle for Earth was over. Humanity had prevailed. In the aftermath, as Confederation reinforcements finally arrived, the legend of the Earthborn only grew stronger. The story spread throughout the galaxy. How humans had defeated the undefeatable, how a supposedly primitive species had outthought and outfought an enemy with centuries more experience. Years later, a young alien recruit would ask a veteran why everyone went quiet when Earthborn units were mentioned. The veteran would explain that humans weren't just effective fighters. They were the only species that evolved primarily by competing with themselves rather than with nature. "Think about what that means," the veteran would say. "Every other species in the galaxy evolved to survive their environment. Humans evolved to survive each other. They are their own worst enemies, which makes them the worst enemies for anyone else too." Throughout the galaxy, in dark corners of spaceports and mercenary bars, the mere mention of Earthborn units continued to cause conversations to halt and eyes to shift nervously. Not because humans were the strongest or fastest or most technologically advanced, but because they were the most unpredictable, the most adaptable, and perhaps the only species that seemed to thrive when everything went wrong.